Welcome to The Crucible, Conversations for the Curious. I am Hamish, your host. This podcast is for anyone going through awakenings, trying to make sense of life, whether dark nights of the soul, needing to make life-changing decisions, struggling with addiction or critical illness, or simply realizing that their life as they know it is not aligned to values and purpose. You are not alone. You can get through this, I promise you. Life is far more beautiful on the other side. Right. Hi everybody, today I'm chatting with Keely. She's in a wonderful networking community that I'm in as well, and we've met through that, and we've had some great conversations about business and work, and over time she shared some of her story, and she's come along today to share her story with us. So Keely, thanks so much for turning up today.
It's my pleasure. And as you say, we've had many conversations, and I know that we've got lots of synergies and similar values and beliefs. So it's really nice to be chatting with someone that's on that same pathway, I suppose, of change.
Well, thank you for being here, Keely, and can you please tell me a little bit about your story?
Well, it's quite a journey actually, but I suppose the starting point really when things rapidly changed is that in 2020, I was part of a, let's just say, strategic reorganisation within business, and ultimately the journey up until that point, probably the 2 years beforehand, was quite challenging, quite toxic. That lack of clarity. And of course, it then also had an impact on myself because I was focusing on my team. Because, as a leader, you have responsibility to be looking after them. But the biggest problem I had is that I wasn't also focusing on myself, which ultimately led to me having a massive anxiety attack in Schiphol Airport, of all places, which is not ideal. Having just had an interview in my office that is in Schiphol, I think it's just like everything just sort of built up to sort of like enough is enough, really. You're not listening to me. And I just broke down, just started sobbing and sobbing and sobbing and sobbing on the escalator and just sort of collapsed. And then ultimately got led off in a wheelchair. Um, and then, really that was the first, let's say, kick to turn around and say something needs to change. But as you know, as when we're stalwart characters, we keep on going on and we think that we're superhuman. And then I finally got the phone call to say that I wasn't successful in my interview and I was put at risk for redundancy. So having just done the same with my team, I then had to do this, went through the same myself. And that was when mentally and physically I ultimately shut down and, went on my own healing journey, so to speak, from that point. So, because, it was not an ideal time because of COVID. So I wasn't able to speak to a therapist, or wasn't able to see a therapist, should I say. So, I had to find my own way.
That's tough, isn't it? I mean, being asked to sort out a team and strategically thin it down and then bye-bye at the end of it. Yeah, I mean, what were you doing running that team? I mean, explain a bit more of that backstory, because I know there was more to that. I know that you were successful and it was something that you
Mm.
were really proud of doing.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'd actually worked for the company for over 23 years, and my last role, excuse me, I was a program and delivery director for group procurement. It was a FTSE 100, big corporate organisation. So I'd been extremely successful. I'd grown an amazing team, which I can only describe. We were like a family, very, very supportive, very collaborative. Lots of striving, and in fact, we helped design the future organisation. It was like an elevated department from where we were at to effectively create an enterprise, which was for program delivery, which was associated to the corporate plan. Because, ultimately, one of the biggest things that I found was that, quite often you had all of these different departments that were delivering different programs and projects, and they weren't necessarily aligned. It means that there was overlap in what we was doing, and until you actually have it so it's connected up with the corporate plan, it means that people are going in different directions. There's different priorities, and that then led to, sort of more challenges. So the reason why we designed this and proposed it to them was, one, to ensure that we was all aligned. It also meant that we were saving significant amounts of money within the business, because when you're streamlining things, it means that you're using resources correctly, and indeed bringing in consultants at the right time, rather than them being brought in and then staying there for evermore, when in reality what you can do is actually use your internal. So that's what we designed. And then, say, unfortunately, instead of me getting the role to run the department, the chap that I would have worked for ended up recruiting externally, someone that he knew. And then the knock-on effect was, instead of it being able to elevate my team as well and utilize them in the right way, they ended up recruiting from different departments, so different priorities and everything like that. So it had a significant impact on me, because obviously we've worked so hard to develop something that was going to be extremely successful for the whole of the business, creating value. And it didn't quite work out how we anticipated, and it really took its toll on me. And I think the greatest gift I got at that time was one of my junior project managers. I had to actually tell her before she went away on her honeymoon, and get her to sign an NDA, and tell her that she was ultimately going to be put at risk while she was away on her honeymoon. And it devastated me. I was in tears. And I know some people think, well, as a leader, you shouldn't do that. But when you've created a relationship with individuals within your team, which you really believe in, I mean, it broke my heart. And she actually said to me, do you know what, Keely? She said, you're not responsible for this. The one that you've got to be responsible for is yourself. You need to take care of yourself. You can't look after us, and we're all adults. And I mean, that was someone, 20 odd years old, and the fact that I had to tell her, before she went on her honeymoon, was just, I mean, just awful, absolutely awful. And she weren't allowed to tell the rest of the team either. So not good. So yeah, so I'd had a very successful career, and I was good at it. But I think when I actually did finally crash and burn, as I call it, the body turned around and said, you've got to start listening. I think it made me realise that I'd fallen into so many traps that executives and leaders quite often fall into, particularly as women. And it really made me reevaluate some of the mistakes I'd made along the way.
Thank you for that. It's tough, isn't it? You strive, you encourage your team, you nurture them, and then for that to happen. But it's always the case, isn't it? When you start to look back, you start to see those things that you missed, the pushing, the encouraging, the nurturing, the doing everything else for other people, and as you said, not really looking after yourself quite enough. We're resilient, we manage for a long time, but as you said, you hit a wall and then you just drop. So what happened? What happened after they wheeled you off? I'm going to say in a wheelbarrow. They wheeled you off in a wheelchair.
I mean, the interesting thing is that I mean, obviously they were worried that there was more to it, like perhaps I'd had like heart attack or something like that. So they obviously had to put me in like the first aid, and monitor me within there for a period of time. And they also gave me some tablets to try to calm my nerves. And they actually did contact the HR department for me, the lady, because she was Dutch and could obviously translate what what it was that I was saying and they were saying, and put me in a space of ease. And I mean, even then, she sort of said to her, you can't keep doing this to yourself. You've got to start focusing on you, and you can't keep everybody else happy. And it's interesting, when you hear my full story, one of the things that became a reality for me, I mean, obviously, like you, I know that when you go on this healing journey, the biggest thing when it was like COVID, obviously we weren't able to spend time with other people, but I was able to go out and walk my dog. I went out walking my dog every single day, And whilst I was walking them, at the beginning, there was like all this noise going on, you're on repeat, you're referring back to what went on over and over again. And initially you think it is, the redundancy that's caused the burnout, but it's not. It's a catalyst. It's like the final nail in the coffin that's saying enough is enough. And as well as doing sort of walking the dog and, the, the hours of walking, I spent so many hours doing that and doing things like gardening. I started doing things like yoga and meditation and just slowing down, just spending some time on my own and being present. And when you are in those spaces, you do get more time to reflect on the past. You get more time to reflect on some of the decisions that you've made. You have more time to focus on, you know, what led to some of the decisions that you've made and some of the things that other people have said. One of the things that I recognize is that I'm huge, well, not anymore, but, people pleaser, always trying to keep everybody else happy, not rocking the boat, trying to ensure that everybody was in a happy space, those kind of things. And the other thing with that as well is that because of working in a male environment, I was always trying to prove myself, trying to, be heard, wanted to stand out. So started doing things like I was like volunteering for everything, always trying to prove myself, oh, I'll take on this, I'll take on that, it's like you end up taking on the world. And the interesting thing is not only you're doing that for you, you're doing it for your team. So you end up taking loads of stuff for them as well. So not only are you burning yourself out, you're actually burning your team out whilst others are taking a back seat and and not doing things as well. So and I think that's the important thing is it makes you realise all of the things that you've done when you stop and slow down and take time out for yourself. Yeah, bit of reflection.
Isn't it? Hindsight is a wonderful thing, and we just have to learn to use it compassionately rather than,
Mm,
why did I do that? Beat myself up for that, beat myself up
mm,
for that. Realize it was just the part of that journey that we're going through. It is that. I mean, I remember thinking my business partner was a bit like you. She would not stop. Perfect, perfect, perfect team member. Work relentless, do everything on and on and on. And after our business, she went on and did her own thing, and she had a stroke. She's only
mm,
45,
mm,
um, because that was her mentality as well. It was just give and work and give and work. And the irony is, it's expected, and sort of well, not society, corporate life almost appreciates. Well, they do, don't they? Because it helps their bottom end. But
mm,
ultimately, as you said, it's no one's a winner, and the business compromises as well, doesn't it?
mm. Yeah. Well, it means that you're not performing at your highest. Your
Mm,
team are not performing at their highest. I mean, you think you are because you have this whole list of things that you've got. I mean, we had like lots and lots of projects, and I mean they were big, big projects. In sort of multiple countries. I mean, we were serving about 27 different countries at the time. So when you are doing a project, they're not small ones. But
mm,
then there's all the other strategy that comes with it. When you're part of a, corporate team, at group level, there's loads of other projects that you end up doing and supporting different departments. But there's only so much you can do. But the problem is that it's the old phrase, isn't it? You give an inch and they'll take a mile. And, it just gets stretched and stretched and stretched.
mm,
And yet you'll see others that have been more respectful of their boundaries and said no or not actually volunteered. And they're doing like the normal, day's work, but without pushing the boundaries constantly.
mm,
And, quite often they get elevated, they get promoted, they get more opportunities. And the reality is that, you start resenting them because they're not doing everything. But you created that situation, you created that environment where
mm,
you're constantly volunteering, and it doesn't just stop in the workplace. It happens within your personal life, whether it's with your friends or your family. If you've got that nature where you want to be helping everybody and serving everybody and making sure that everybody's happy, you're giving and giving and giving and giving. And quite often those individuals don't know how to ask you whether you want any help because you don't allow them to help you. They think that you're doing okay. Oh, don't worry. Keely wants to do it. She's the one that likes organising things. Don't worry, Keely will get it done. Don't worry. You're that sort of mindset. So other people start relying on you, not because they're taking advantage of you. You've allowed that situation to occur. So, I know it's insane.
Yeah, madness, isn't it? Yeah. So what did you do when you left? What was?
Well, the irony of it. So the irony of it. So when they actually put me at risk, the 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 general management team was like, "Why have you decided to do this?" Keely is the Brexit specialist, and I've been running it for over 4 years. So they did offer an alternative role within the business, which I didn't want to take because it was working for an area that I didn't want to be a part of because I knew it was quite toxic and, and all those kind of things. But I did say to them, look, okay, then I won't take that role. But if you want me to come back as a consultant and continue running Brexit, then I'm happy to do that. So that's what I'd agreed. So I set up my own consultancy business. So although I crashed and burned, obviously a month into it, I've been signed off sick. That's when the conversation started happening about what it was going to do and how I was going to manage it and those kind of things. And it was during that time that I said, I'll come back and do Brexit as a consultant. And I did that probably because of all of the delays that was happening with Brexit for probably for about another year and a half, 2 years, I think. So I made hay while the sun shine, as they say. And I also got opportunities to do consultancy work for other companies as well because I was a specialist in that area. And some of the suppliers that knew me from when I was in that business and saw all the stuff that I was posting about Brexit and all those kind of things, they then contacted me and said, would you be interested in doing an audit on us, on where we are and helping us where it's needed? So, I was doing that as well. So that was great. So it gave me opportunities in that area. But interestingly, whilst I was doing all that work, particularly where I was working for the same company I was working, I realised that I hadn't changed anything. I was effectively doing the same role, but as a consultant. And because I still had that emotional connection with the company and the individuals that I worked on, imagine if you're somewhere for 23 years, there's not many parts of the business that you don't know about and people you don't know about. So you've still got that emotional connection with them. So where there's bureaucracy, where there's politics, where there's toxic environments, where there's certain behaviour, you're still getting sucked into that. And also their expectations of you are still the same because they know what you was like before. So, and I mean, it was really high pressure. And I mean, I have to say, when we went live for Brexit on January the 1st, we started serving day one. Obviously got that right. I'm not saying there weren't delays, but we got it sorted out. But I mean, those first 3 weeks was like probably one of the hardest times in my entire career because of the long days, the pressure. I mean, I had 200 emails, I had people messaging, complaining, and even if it wasn't my fault, I had people sort of like, not being very pleasant. Even my really good friends who ended up apologising numerous times. But it made me have more of a wake up call of actually this isn't what I love. This isn't what I enjoy doing. It doesn't fill me up. So having had sort of like those few months before I went, so July the 1st was when I officially started working because you have to have time out when you're made redundant from a company. But because I had that rest in time, it sort of made me realise, how much I really didn't enjoy that side of it. But on reflection, the thing that I really enjoyed more than anything was when I was coaching and training and guiding, and when people are getting that inspiration, seeing that light shine in their eyes when they've got an idea, helping them to go through that process of change and turn them into reality. It was that part of it I knew passionately was what I loved and enjoyed doing. So it was then that I decided actually it's a different path that I need to be going on and changing my direction. And the coaching and training and mentoring was the side, that I decided to go on as a business. What I didn't know at that time was the what. So again, I then had to go on some more sort of journeys of discovery. So
But that's life, isn't it? It is. It's journey, level up, sit there, look around, get a clap, and off you go again. How did you get to that point where you realized it was the working with people, encouraging them to find their greatness and their aha moments? How did you work out that's what you wanted to do? Because obviously that's quite a change from the corporate environment of Brexit and everything.
I think because obviously with my teams, I mean, if you looked at my journey, everything that I've done has been about sort of business improvement, about training others and coaching and development. I mean, I was trained as a world-class manufacturing practitioner, which is teaching. I was trained as a Kaizen practitioner, and everything I did was a practitioner, which then helps you to build teams, to lead teams, to train people, to coach people. Everything is on that path. And whenever I was doing those kind of things, running workshops with people, that was when I was in my element. That is what I enjoyed passionately. And interestingly, I think it became more of a reality because in June 21, well, prior to June, first of all, I actually joined this executive networking events group, amazing lady called Shelley, and signed up to go to Crom Castle in Northern Ireland, to stay there for a week for a masterclass. It was a big investment. Part of it meant that you wrote a chapter within a book about your own journey, your personal story. The book was called The Art of Risk and Reward, and my chapter was actually defining moments, that effectively about changing your pathway, really. And at the same time, it meant that you had the opportunity to be standing on a platform and speak in front of an audience, and the Earl of Crom, and plus it was going to be streamed to about 8,500 of audience. So nothing small. But whilst I was, when I signed up for that, and I thought, well, I had no idea how I was going to do it, but I thought, oh, I'll do this anyway. And I also knew that there were so many things that needed to change within the corporate environment, with leaders, about having clarity of vision, about being clear about what your values and your beliefs are, about supporting the teams within the organisation, about, thinking about the guts of the organisation, which I know sounds a weird term, but I was designing something that was based on the face of the business, the heart of the business, the mind of the business, and the guts of the organisation. And it was, I had all of these thoughts in my head about what needed to be done. I just didn't know how to do it. So in June of 21, this little man popped up on my screen, known as Andy Harrington, and was talking about how you can turn your service into a product. And, because most of us, especially in coaching and training, we have got all of these ideas about how you can help people, but we're not very good at actually turning it into a product that people can see, a tangible product that people can see. And this is where he came into the equation. And he's talked about how you can actually do this and also be able to communicate it in a way on the stage and a platform. And I was like, this is exactly what I need, So I watched one of his webinars, which was only supposed to be a small one. Thought I'd do the same thing that most people do, is that, just partially listen to a webinar, partially doing other stuff, drinking, doing multiple things. But as soon as it started, I was like, boom, I was in there and I stayed there for like 4 hours. Then I stayed at the end of it, signed up for the next bit. Then I signed up for Speaker University, which was 4 days. I was the first one to sign up to Speaker Academy. And then I joined that. And then I ended up then becoming one of his coaches and mentors to train other people to speak on a platform. So I'd gone sort of like this massive journey all in one go. I don't do anything by halves. So, but it helped me to be able to formulate a program where I could coach and train others to be able to rediscover what it was that they truly love, be able to build a pathway of change for them. But before they did that, try to unlock and unblock some of the things that are holding them back. The self-talk, the lack of self-belief, the confidence, the stress management, not actually taking care for ourselves, all of those kind of things. So for the first time, I was able to sort of bring everything together of my 23 years of experience into a way that can help others to escape or avoid altogether all of the things that I've been doing over the years. So quite a long story about it, but yeah, that was really ultimately how I got to now.
Thank you for that. I think that's remarkable. As you were saying that, I was just following my timeline. So you've basically throughout all of your working life, you've been trained how to coach people. You've done courses on how to coach people. So while you were working hard, you've had all that education teaching you all the skills you need now to go off on your own and add your magic into it. I think that is, but you've had to get to a place, a dark hole, to then look back.
Mm-hmm.
I did the same thing. I worked in the TV industry. I got paid to listen to amazing people talk. I
Mm-hmm.
realized 3 weeks ago I got paid to learn how to interview people and how to hold a space and how to encourage conversation and things like that. And it's really wonderful when you are able to look back and go, it all makes sense now. All that
Mm-hmm.
crap, all the fun, all the heartache, all the redundancy, all this, that, and the other. And when you do join it all up, when you have that quiet time that you said, that slow time, it begins to make a bit more sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does, and it's quite magical as well when you suddenly have that wake up call, and interestingly, it's almost like a second wave now. Sadly, my brother died 2 years ago, and when I was first told about his diagnosis, and it was very rapid, that we found from the day we found out to the point that he passed away. But when I was first told about his diagnosis for it, I had almost like another wake up call because originally I was sort of thinking, oh, let's focus on leaders within businesses like CEOs and, their teams and, be within that corporate environment. Why am I actually sending myself into a location that was actually contributing to me feeling the way in which I was feeling? In fact, what I should be doing is actually helping other amazing, incredible women that are, ambitious, it doesn't matter where they are, whether it's in organizations, whether it's being entrepreneurs or business owners, is to be able to help them effectively escape or avoid all of those patterns of behavior that I'd fallen into. Focus on people that I can connect with, that, the as you say, when you're talking your story, the challenges, your learnings, your experiences, you're talking the same language. You're talking to people that are going to connect with what it is that you're saying. And if you can tap into your own journeys and your own genius, and be able to help people, I mean, what better, things can you do in life? I mean, I know myself, every single time I help someone, and it doesn't matter whether it is female or male, because quite often there are men that actually gravitate towards me because of the things I say. It's more they get with the emotional connection, why it's the emotional intelligence, why it's so important. They recognise some of the traps. But when you do that, when you see that moment of clarity, when you do see that light shine in someone's eyes when they have that moment, and you can help them to move away from where they are, I mean, what's more magical than that? And I mean, every single time here, this is where I feel it every single time, and it makes me smile, and it's an amazing thing to be a part of.
I think that's lovely, isn't it? And then you've given them a chance to start to believe in themselves, and who knows where they'll go with it.
Mm,
You know, it could be the next CEO of something that makes Microsoft look small. It could be someone who can now just concentrate on being a mum and love their children and change the stories that she learned. I mean, there's no limit. I think that's really
mm,
lovely. Yeah.
mm. Yeah.
And
Well,
you're a bit more peaceful and a bit more enjoying life a little bit more and able to walk your dog with a little bit more of a bounce, I guess, as well.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think that, and I think you found this as well, is that as soon as you do stop and slow down, and the noise in here stops, um, you're far more present. You see the beauty around you. You hear the birds sing. You see, the sheep that are in the field next door to you. You see the swans fly off. I'm having a conversation with a dog. Many people might think I'm raving mad, but so I'm quite happy having a chat with them. But, being present, in
Mm.
that space of calm, and not racing towards an end goal. And yes, it is fantastic having a vision. It is important to have clarity of your journey, and where you're going and how you're going to get there. But, for goodness sake, be present whilst you're doing it, and, enjoy the here and now, because you don't know how long you've got. You don't know when things will change. You don't know when those opportunities might have to do, a detour. So just slow down,
Just slow down.
just
Yeah.
enjoy it. Yeah,
Mm. Especially on a lovely summer's day like today. Yeah. Sit outside in the sun like I am and just enjoy it. Yeah. I think it's so
yeah,
important.
uh yeah,
Mm.
definitely.
Mm.
Um, and I think the other thing as well is, I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is that setting personal boundaries as well. It's nice being able to help others. It's nice being able to serve others. But so often we get, especially if you've got that people pleaser mindset, we fall into the traps of not setting personal boundaries, and we're always, saying yes to everybody else. And there's also this belief that if we don't say yes, then we might be judged, we might be seen as weak, we might be seen as, not very nice. We're, we're just being unkind, and, we're not respecting somebody else. And the reality is that's just so not true, because when you start setting personal boundaries, when you do start saying no, as I tell and say no is a sentence, you can follow it with a thank you, but you don't have to justify why. Because we all feel that need to say, oh no, I can't because of blah, 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 blah. And sometimes people end up lying about it, and you don't need to lie. It's just that, no, not right now. It's a no,
Yep.
thank you. And the amazing thing is actually people respect you more for doing that. You show up as a leader when you respect your boundaries. And not only does it actually teach you and others to respect your boundaries, is it teaches them to respect their own. Lead by example.
Mm.
There's so many lessons that we learn when we just slow down.
Yep. That's really interesting. That the people pleasing, the codependency, it's got a darker side to it, which you've alluded to there. But why do we do it? Why is it so prevalent? I mean, it's not just women; men do it as well. But I
Mm,
know it is more of a female trait. But why
mm.
is it such a unhealthy and toxic thing? That is, I've got to be really careful with this because, yeah, why is it toxic and unhealthy, particularly the unhealthy bit?
So, first of all, why do we do it? I mean, the starting point is it's programmed into us, and that's not intentionally; it's unintentionally, and also meant with good intention, in the sense that, our parents, our in our schools, our peers, our colleagues, for our culture, our religions, it can be so many different why we behave in that way, that need to please. And some of it is, I mean, I know one of the reasons that I do it is that I have this fear of confrontation. And the fear of confrontation is that, you if everybody's happy, then everything's fine. If people aren't happy, there's unpredictability. So if you're in that state where you're pleasing everybody, then you feel that everything is going to remain in that sort of happy space and everything's going to be good and all those kind of things. You've then also got, the fact that, as a kid, you get these statements, you're happily playing with a toy and then another child, perhaps takes it off of you and you want to take it back and they say, oh, don't be unkind, let them have it, let them play with it. And it's like, well, why? Why aren't they corrected for, taking it off of someone in the first place? There's also this situation where you feel the need to say yes because if you say no, that you're not a very nice person. And that's not true. If you're saying no all of the time, I get how someone would turn and say, well, that's not very nice, a nice person. But, and also the other thing is that you've got that side of it where you're always told to say yes. And then also for as cultures and in certain families, you've got these attitudes where the women should be waiting on the men, that they are, they're there to serve men or serve even their brothers or their sisters because they're older, all of those kind of things. So they are literally that. They're programmed into us. And it's very hard to break some of these patterns that are programmed into us. And until you see it and you're aware of it, you can't do anything about it. So it just becomes an instinct to act in that way. Oh, don't worry, I'll do it, like, or, oh, it's fine, I'll sort it all out. It's like, oh, I've got an event, I'll sort it out. Got an email to do, I'll sort it out. Got a phone call to do, I'll sort it out. Cook a dinner for God knows how many people. Oh, don't worry, I'll do it. It's that programmed behaviour. And the reason why it then ends up being toxic, it's toxic on you because we cannot drink from an empty cup. And we need to have those times where we do practice self-care and self-love and self-compassion and take time out for ourselves. Even with our children, you can't constantly be there for their beck and calls. So you do need to say times of it. Do you know what? No, I'm having some hour, an hour for myself to just go off, whether it's sit in my garden and be quiet, go and do some exercise, go and have a walk, run a bath, uh, put some bubble bath in it, if you want to drink some wine or, just, I don't care what it is, but I mean, I don't recommend that you do treat yourself to a glass of wine every single time that you need to, but it's just practicing some self-care and self-love for yourself. I mean, my daughter, the best thing that she ever said to me, we was having a massage. She was a massage aromatherapist, and I was having a massage. And one of the things I always used to do is, I mean, I travelled all the time, and unfortunately, my husband's got chronic back injury and fibromyalgia. My daughter's got fibromyalgia, and so I always wanted to come into the house, going, everything's fine, nothing to see here, all energized because I didn't want to bring home my crap because obviously they've got enough going on in their lives. I used to sit in the car, I'd have a cry in the car on the driveway, then come in with that, hey, and she was doing me a massage one day, and while she was massaging me, I just started crying and crying and crying and crying. And she was like, why are you crying? And I explained what was going on. And she said, has it ever occurred to you, Mum, that you don't allow us, you don't give us permission to be able to ask if you're okay? You don't give us permission to be able to support or help you because you always come across as super strong. And unless you allow us, empower us, then we never know how to. Punch, gut punch, and
Mm.
made me realise that how selfish I was actually being because I wasn't actually empowering them to help me. And that's where the sort of toxic behaviour comes in for yourself, not necessarily for others, but for yourself. But then,
Mm.
because you're tired, so you're exhausted, so stressed and anxious, then that will then have a knock on your performance, the way in which you behave. You start being tetchy with other people. You become impatient. You as I say, you get resentful because they're not doing things, and you make these assumptions that they actually know to help. And it's like, because we say, yeah, well, they should know. It's like, no, they don't know because you don't allow it. So that's how it then gravitates on you. So it has impacts in so many different ways.
You have just described my life in so many ways, and thank you. It is an uncomfortable reminder of doing all of those things. Yes, I can do it. Yes, I can do it. You should know. I was, they should have known, and it's madness to think that if you don't tell people, don't ask, they're not going to know that you need help. It is, isn't it? It's not being authentic, as you said. I might have to move. You're so busy people pleasing, so you can keep it controlled, keep it safe, keep it all, where you know what you need. You're disempowering people. I mean, I used to disempower my ex-partners and things.
Mm,
And then I had to go through the process of why did I do that? And then beat myself up, and then realizing that I just didn't know better. And I had to stop. I had to consciously not beat myself up for that behavior because I didn't know better,
mm,
and then make those changes. So yeah, I think it's interesting because when I mentioned that on social media about the unhealthy aspects of codependency, it's just like, no, I'm loving, I'm giving. It's delicate, and I think you've described it so beautifully. So thank you for that. I know people listening will be going through the same thing as me, looking at it and realizing that, yeah, I did that. So how did you make sense of that realization of like, wow, that is me, and then mitigate the beating yourself up or the shaming yourself or the guilty for disempowering, because that's like the next step, isn't it?
yeah, it's an interesting thing, really. I think, like anything, it's that when you're on this sort of journey discovery, you do, especially if you've got that growth mindset. You read so many books. You listen to so many podcasts. You listen to anything associated to learning, really, to find, what is it that I'm doing that causes me to behave this way. And I mean, one of them was, the people pleasing and trying to understand. Well, it was a book called People Pleaser, and it was trying to understand what was driving those sort of patterns of behaviour. But also, I think, I mean, my husband actually, despite him being medically retired for so long, he practiced NLP, and of course, there's a lot of books associated with that helps you to sort of start understanding some of the things that you're actually doing. And,
Mm.
the biggest thing was this whole realization that, external factors, they're always going to come in. It doesn't matter. In any walk of life, you will have external factors that come in. And for anybody that has practice or is aware of neuro linguistic programming, why don't they call it something so long is beyond me, but there you go. But when you start studying that and you realize that you do sort of generalize, you filter, you delete, and all of these different things, you realize that whatever those external factors are, the only person that can change the way in which you, and I say react or respond to it, is yourself. So the only way that you can understand what's causing you to behave in that way is be able to create awareness of some of your behaviors, the way in which you're behaving on a day-to-day basis. So you can start asking your self questions about, well, why did I do that? When my stress levels start going up and getting elevated, when I snapped at my loving son that has a way of being able to elevate my responses quite quickly. Um, you know, why was I in this specific event? Feeling like this. When you start asking those questions, the more questions you ask yourself, then the more you start understanding yourself and where it's coming from, why you did that, the decisions and the connections. So then you can then start thinking about, well, what can I do differently? How can I reframe the way in which I reacted and be able to take that step back? And that's where this being able to stop and slow down and breathe and take time to sort of think about, well, okay, how can I respond to this differently? And sometimes in the moment it's hard, but if you can sort of take a step back afterwards and go, right, okay, then, well, if this happens again, I know it's going to happen again with certain individuals. It definitely is going to happen. So how can I respond to them in a controlled way? So you're taking back 100% control of that situation. Even the worst thing that we often do is that people fear conflict. And the reality is that when you avoid it, you're actually not in a win situation. You're always in a lose situation. And yes, there are times when you can turn around and say, actually, this is getting out of control. It's not serving either of us. So now we both need to take a step back to take time out to think about it. And then when you come back later on, you come back in a more controlled manner anyway. So you've had time to reflect on what they've said. You've had time to reflect on what you said. Then you're able to come back in that space of control, and you show up as a leader in those situations, not just as a leader in a work environment, but within your family and your friends. Someone that people will follow rather than that individual that's always in an emotional, as I call it, the emotional monkey. Um, and not just as an emotional monkey, that person that the ego takes over, or you start, second guessing what somebody else is saying. You start becoming as that one that's always draining the room. When you have more control over what it is you're saying and understanding where it comes from, and the control is back there, then you then show up in a way where you are more controlled. People will want to follow you. You've got more structure, more clarity, more focus. So many things. So there's so many things that you can do. But that awareness is the key thing, isn't it?
I can say it's hard to find that awareness when we're so busy rushing around, being busy, being human doings, running around, fixing, saving, rescuing, making money. And not looking after ourselves, as you said, not slowing down, not taking the dog for a walk and having a chat with it when you get back. We've got it all wrong somewhere, haven't we? Somewhere I got a t-shirt, somewhere something has gone terribly wrong. I'm not wearing it today, obviously, but I think I should wear that more often, because somewhere something went terribly wrong.
Taking that point, I think in schools, there are three things that should be taught in schools, just as part of the curriculum, and it would save so much stress, anxiety, and burnout, not just as adults, but in schools as well. It would help us kids to have much healthier lives, instead of having all of that anxiety and anger that's built up. And one of them, I believe, is emotional freedom technique, which for anybody that doesn't know, it's effectively like a tapping, which is on the meridians of, the same sort of locations that you've got for acupuncture, the tapping points. And it teaches you to be able to process things in a healthier way, bring your stresses down. There is no risk to it. Anybody can learn it, no matter what age they are. So it's really good for helping them from that side of it. The other thing is it's actually learning to breathe properly. So often we're told to breathe and pull in our belly rather than really, if you're breathing properly and you're breathing into your belly and your belly is ballooning and you're learning to actually, that it helps you to de-stress in those moments, which helps you to get more clarity. Learning, as I say, to manage conflict in a constructive way rather than a destructive way. So you're having healthy conversations. You're just doing those three things. And finally, is learning that it is okay to say no. and you can set healthy boundaries. And those four, and I know I said three first of all, but I think those four things, I think it would help. I mean, can you imagine what schools would be like?
Yeah, I love that. Those four are so important, aren't they? And the breathing one, as you did that, I suddenly realized, yeah, I'm sitting straight, tummy in. It's just like, now I breathe. It's like, oh, yeah, it's all there, but it's comfortable.
Yeah,
Shoulders sag, just relax, breathe.
yeah.
Yeah, and just calm down and get more present again. Yeah. Who knows? I know we've got a mutual friend who works with kids, so maybe she can implement that kind of stuff into those schools or into the classes and things that she does.
Be absolutely brilliant if schools could do that. Part of their practice. And I think it would be not only great in schools, it would be great for parenting, it would be great in the workplace. It would have so many different benefits that it could have by introducing those, four simple strategies. Um, yeah, life would be so much easier, wouldn't it?
And then we'd find something else to complicate it. But that's part of being human. We get to a level, we learn something, and then there's the next thing to learn, then there's the next thing to learn. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
yeah, it's remarkable, and I do think my generation, it was very, very different to the current kids and things like that. There's much more authenticity rather than this attachment, this need, and things like that. But it makes it more difficult because they're perceived as unruly and not paying attention and things. But really, they're just
Mm.
being truer to themselves. So they've got their own journeys to make sense of as well.
And it's interesting that you say that because, I mean, one of the key parts of my program, um, the Freedom Transformation Formula, which I love, um, is about helping people to rediscover their why. Because one of the biggest things that I've discovered is that, particularly what we're up to now, is it Generation Z? I lose track of all of them now. But, working backward from the millennials, they are very much focused within organizations and business on focusing on the purpose, being connected to their values and their beliefs, because, unless they're aligned, that's when then it becomes unbalanced, and that's where some of the behaviors kick in, and the frustrations and feeling like it's Groundhog Day and just like life's on repeat, that cycle. And so often they'll just leave an organisation. They will walk. They're there maybe for a year, 2 years. Whereas, like I said, I was there for 23 years. Now half of my organisation, particularly my age group and upwards, they've been there. It's almost like they've been born on the end of a paper machine, and then they was there for forever, and so often with organisations, that's what actually happened. But now with, youngsters, they'll think with their feet. If they're not happy and they don't like what the environment is, don't feel they've got a purpose, they don't feel it's connected to their values, they go, I, I'm leaving. I just don't want to be here anymore, and they'll do it. So the question we have to ask any leader, doesn't matter what type of business it is how are you going to keep the next generations? Because if you do not change your behavior, if you do not nurture your teams, if you don't give them any values, if you don't empower them, if you don't motivate them, you're not going to be able to keep your business. That's the fact. That is what will happen, because they're not going to accept it. They're not accepting it. And you know what, Hamish? Since COVID, with people in our age group and above, and maybe younger, probably in the sort of, mid 40s, where they had not had to, where they were put in a situation where they spent time at home and they could spend time with their families and start spending time with their fans and start being present, even more so, they've gone, enough is enough. I'm not accepting this anymore. So they're leaving and thinking of their fate. There are more businesses, entrepreneurs that have actually been generated since COVID than there's ever been. And actually, there's more women as well. So it's like almost doubled, or in fact, I think trebled, the amount of women that have gone into business on their own and said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. So,
I think that's wonderful. You work in this sphere, so you see this all the time, do you?
yeah, yeah, most definitely. I mean, even with, I mean, I think I mentioned that I'm part of the Speaker Academy, and so one of the things I do is coach people in how to present on the stage and create their own frameworks. And quite often, there is a lion's share of that audience, ex-corporates, that have said, "I'm done. I've had enough. I don't want this anymore." So they're thinking with their feet, and they're taking up opportunities to actually create their own businesses and do what they love.
Mm.
And being a part of that, being able to actually help them to discover what it is they truly love. Because after all, we only have one life. And as I say, be like more dragonfly life, be more dragonfly, should I say. Live life with passion, purpose, joy, and most of all for the full. So, and what better way to do it? We have one crack of the whip, don't we, Hamish? Let's
Yeah,
enjoy it.
absolutely. I think that's lovely, and I love the fact that you've gained all that experience in that arena that you walked from. Okay, well you left, and you're helping people to go back to that arena, but with boundaries and self pride
Mm,
and self respect, and that's just so empowering, isn't it? I mean that
mm,
must get you up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes get you to bed at 11:30 at night, because it's like, I'm having fun. And when you have
mm,
fun, you're energized and you're empowered. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, I mean, Hamish, it's it is tough being an entrepreneur, fact.
Mm.
But when you've actually found your passion, what it is that drives you every single day, and it does motivate you, it's like your inner compass. And, even on the toughest day, you still feel motivated, you still feel energized, you still say, I can do this. And that's the thing that keeps you going, um, with adversity and resilience and consistency, Um, but the important thing that I truly encourage, is that no matter what happens, even as an entrepreneur or a business owner or a leader, is that you do need to remember to stop, slow down, take time out, because if you do that, to 11:30 every single night, if you do get up at 5 o'clock every single morning, there's only so long that you can keep that up. So you still need to be mindful of yourself and be aware of what your daily life is looking at, and ask yourself, why am I working till late at night? Um, because, this you can keep on sort of doing the do, but it's not going to be serving you long term, and you're not going to be able to sustain it, no matter how motivated and energized you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Too much do, you'll be in the do, won't you? Yeah.
Yes,
Mm.
indeed. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. Start being a human being, and
Yeah.
also remember that human connection is absolutely fundamental with it as well. So if you're
Mm.
locked away in your room all of the time and not actually connecting with others, that's not serving you either. So,
Brilliant. Keely, this has been fabulous. Thank you. I think you've shared some real gems and some insight, and you've dared to tell people your story, of breaking down. And thank you for
mm,
that, because there's a lot of embarrassment. There's a lot of, I couldn't do that. I wouldn't want that. Would just be my idea of absolute hell. But you've
mhm,
owned it, and you said that allowed you to make sense of everything that you've brought with you. You've looked back and thought, I learned how to do this, this, and this, and this. I also
mhm.
learned how to look after myself, and now you're empowering others. I think that is really genuinely wonderful, and I really wish you all the best for that. So thank you. Yeah.
That's right. My pleasure. And yeah, thank you for allowing me space to be on here. I've really enjoyed it, and I've loved your questions. So,
Mm.
and this is for everybody that's listening. If you want to take a personal boundaries quiz, Hamish will be sharing it in the link, so I'll be sharing it with others. And it's an opportunity for you to just evaluate whether you are setting personal boundaries, or maybe that little people pleaser is slipping in. So it's a great opportunity to just assess where you're at right now.
Brilliant. Well, we will definitely put that in the show notes. So where can people find that, and where can people find out more about you, Keely?
So obviously I'll share the personal boundaries quiz with you. But equally, I'm I'm everywhere, should I say? So I'm on LinkedIn as Keely Woolley, and also on Facebook. I also have a podcast called Let's Thrive and Shine Beyond Belief, because at the end of the day, we're all limitless, aren't we, Hamish? So it's only that little perler in our head that stops us. And on Instagram and TikTok and X, otherwise known as Twitter. Why it was ever changed to X is beyond me, but it'll be as Meta, more with no E, for success. So, as you can imagine, always associated to the dragonfly.
I love it. Yeah, I think your logo is beautiful, and I love the dragonfly. It's so elegant. Yeah,
Yeah.
fabulous. Thank you. And then one last question. I think I know the answer to this, but what did you learn from your awakening and making sense of how you had to change?
Stop. Slow down. Be present. Enjoy the moment. And most of all, live a happy, very fulfilling life.
Brilliant. Yep. Absolutely resonate. I think that is fantastic. Thank you ever so much, Keely. That was really, really super. Thank you for your time.
And thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Crucible, Conversations for the Curious. If these powerful stories of transformation resonated with you, be sure to like, subscribe and share this show with anyone who you think could do with a dose of inspiration for their own journey. I would really appreciate it if you could make any comments on your favourite podcast platform as well. That helps me reach more people. All the important links and information are in the show notes below. Thank you very much for listening, and catch up with you soon.